Is aware who is intervening in the session, right? So I just wanted to list the name of the people that will intervene. Yes, I know that's now. Now it's me, but then there are other people joining the conversation, and the reason why I wanted to name them is basically because part of what I'm gonna say is a sort of reflection and a sort of list of questions that I think that these people that are joining us in this conversation on how to reinforce building of the commons may want to answer, and this is very much related to what we have discussed until now. So those who will intervene later are after me, like are Francine Mestrom, Alan Truckman, Massimo De Angelis, Yanis, and Francesco Brancaccio. So somehow keep in mind which kind of question I would like to raise, because I hope that you would try to give your answer to these issues. So, okay, the title of the session is How to Reinforce Building of Commons, which I assume we agree it's an important thing, it's an important goal. But one of my first questions would be, why do we want to build the commons? In my view, so this is sort of my answer, but there may be other answers, building commons is basically a way to react to current economic, social, and, depending on the country, so it applies to most of our countries here, also political crisis. So it's not only a matter of reacting, it's not only a way to deal with something that suddenly happens in a society, it's also really a broader reaction to a situation that we all see, that we all know, and it is a situation that has economic, social, and political components. So it's a very comprehensive and broad crisis. But there is another reason that exists behind the desire to build commons, and it is the fact that the very fact of building commons is also a way to create and reinforce bonds at local level, and it may lead to creating alternatives, building alternatives, because we need these alternatives. So there is a sort of cooperation between different aspects, creating bonds, building alternatives, and reacting to the economic, social, and political crisis. There could be, there has been in the past, there have been in the past other ways to react to other crises. The point is that here we are discussing about this way of reacting to this crisis, the way we now react to the crisis that we have now in our countries, or at least in Europe. But, and I would like to underline this, it's not just a matter of Europe, it's a matter of everywhere. It's a matter of a global crisis, so it's a matter of a global reaction. Even though 80% of the experience that have been shared here today are from Europe, it doesn't mean that it is about Europe. It is about everywhere. But, and this is my answer to why do we want to build the commons. There may be other answers, so I wonder if there are. Then I have a second question, which is, what define a common good, and who decides if something is or is not a common? It is very much related to what we have been discussing just now on education and labor, and is it education a common, is work common? In order to know if something is a commons, we should be able to define what a commons is, and this is a very first challenge, because a common definition of commons doesn't exist. There is no unanimous definition, and this is good. It's not something bad. The reason why there is no unanimous definition is because backgrounds and political approaches are different. There are, not to talk about language and legal frameworks, so of course definitions are different. The point is, what do we find in common, sorry for the words wrong, what do we find in common when we try to build a definition of the commons? What is the minimum that we want to use to define a common? And in any case, who is entitled to say this belongs, this follows under the definition of the commons, or it doesn't? Some experiences have been existing for years or even for decades, and now these experiences are called commons. Now these experiences are redefined as commons. But why is this idea of commons, this idea of commoning suddenly, let's say, fashionable? Is it a fashionable idea, or is it a way that we have to react to something that is completely new? And this is something that is I think it's very interesting. For how long will be the debate on the commons be so relevant? Will we be able to keep the debate on the commons alive for so long? Will we be able to build alternatives that are so effective that we will keep the debate alive, that we will keep discussing on the commons, or at some point this will simply end up or just change name, as it has happened with other experiences. Personally, I think that one of the few ways, that's really my personal opinion, so I'm really curious to know what are the opinions of the other people that will talk after me. I think that even though the definition is not unanimous, and so it's virtually impossible to say if something is or is not a commons, there is a way to do that. There is a way to define if something is a commons, and to me, and really it's my personal opinion, the way is to define how this experience, either a practice or the concrete management of a resource or of a space or immaterial commons, to me what is relevant is if it works as a common. Is it something that works as a common? Then to me in this case, it could be a common. The point is, again, how you define what works as a common. I have my personal definition, which is sharing responsibility, co-managing and cooperation, meaning not cooperatives, really cooperation among peoples, and of course building alternatives, but it's not a definition that should apply to everything. It's really the way I've studied commons and the way the minimum characteristics that I've found in the experiences I'm familiar with. And a third issue is what the process looks like. Is the process of commoning the same everywhere? And the answer is obviously not. As Electra said just a few minutes ago, there are experiences that started simply to react to a situation, and then they became an experience of commoning in their everyday activities. So they started as a reaction, and then they recognized themselves as a commoning experience. And I'm familiar with several experiences like that. Very, very basic experiences such as urban gardens in certain areas. People just gather together to react to a specific situation in their neighborhood, and at some point they realized that what they were doing was something really alternative, was something that was commoning, but they didn't gather in order to start a process of commoning. But once again, what is the process of commoning? What we consider as fundamental to recognize a process of commoning. As I said, for me, it's a matter of co-responsibility, collaboration, reciprocity, and social alternatives. But I personally also think that in some cases, making reference to traditional experiences, so-called traditional experiences of commons, those who are mostly related to natural resources management, those that are like the basic of the commons as studied in economics, may be in economics may be relevant, may give some tips, some suggestions on how to improve certain process of commoning. And then I have two very last issues. One is it relevant? Is the legal component relevant? Is the official recognition of commoning experience relevant? Is it relevant everywhere? Is it relevant in certain contexts? Does this, the possibility of having a legal framework that recognizes the commons, is it useful to replicate the experiences? Is there any chance that some basic aspects of legal changes can be reproduced in other contexts? And this is particularly interesting when we talk about occupied factories and self-production, because there are countries where there is a legislation that applies in the case of occupied factories, and in some cases this has been reproduced in other countries, or the existing legislation has been used to as a sort of inspiration for similar experiences in other cases. Would that be possible also for commoning? And the very last question, which is of course the most complicated today, because it has been discussed very much till now, is which kind of interaction can exist between commons and public services? From an economic definition, the traditional one, common goods, and I underline saying common goods, I'm not saying commons here, are opposite to public goods, because common goods are rivalrous and non-excludable, while public goods are non-rivalrous and non-excludable. So they are in traditional classic economics, this is definition. However, this definition clearly does not apply in our case, because we are talking about different kind of experiences. The experience practice component is very much relevant. So, and the discussion about neither market nor state, as the title of one famous book by Elinor Ostrom, is another controversial problematic, because what's the role of state? And personally, I very much agree with what Dora just said about the fact that there are cases where the state has to keep the responsibility of providing certain services, because on the one hand, because it's the state responsibility, and on the other hand, because it would not be possible in any case for a small community, for a small neighborhood, I mean, it would not be possible for a small community or a small neighborhood to deal with the water supply of a city like Athens, just to stay in the example on water, which is a topic I'm very much familiar with. However, I wonder if rethinking the day of public, the very last sentence, rethinking the idea of public, having in mind the idea of commoning, I'm wondering if it can be useful, if it opens new paths. Yeah, so that's it.